Welcome to MidLIFE Matters, where we celebrate women's wisdom and wit. I'm Georgian Lussier, your host, and I'm delighted to introduce today's guest, Jackie Downing, who has a key role in the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven, and she also volunteers with the Whitney Players Theatre Company. Welcome, Jackie.
Thank you.
And you've worked with the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven for about 14 years, and you're now the Senior Director of Grantmaking and Nonprofit Support.
Mm-hmm.
Please share some of the rich history of the foundation, how it got started, and some of the interesting things about how it's evolved.
Well, let me tell you a little bit about community foundations in general before I get into our foundation.
Sure.
Our foundation is almost 100 years old. We were founded in 1928. But community foundation concept started in Cleveland, mid-19-teens, about 1914, when a couple of trust bankers who were managing funds had money left to them. And the people who left the money said, "Can you please take care of getting this out to the community?" Well, the trust banker said, "We know how to manage money, we know how to invest it for you, but we don't know how to give it out in the community." So they created a community endowment. Finding people who would know how in the community to disperse the money in a way that it would work with the community. And that was a community foundation. It took us another 14 years to get it here to New Haven. So in 1928, we created the community endowment with our trust bankers and have been managing those donations that have come to us since then, since 1928. Our first donor was a woman, Nettie Dayton, who made the first grant to the Community Foundation. We made our first grant out with that not long after. It's arguably made to the New Haven Symphony because they were around back then. So Nettie was an unrestricted gift.
Okay.
So her money is doing all kinds of things in the community that Nettie could never have envisioned.
Oh, yeah.
Things like the need for technology, the pandemic we just went through.
Right.
She never could have envisioned that.
So am I correct, funds for purposes such as things as milk and coal?
You're right. We talked about the provision of milk and coal. That was Mrs. Silverthau.
Okay.
Her gift came in 1942. So milk and coal? Coal, not so much anymore. But we decided that Mrs. Silverthau wanted to keep people warm. So with her funds, to this day, we still do energy assistance. We, as the Community Foundation, could not say, "Hey, you know what," to the estate of Mrs. Silverthau. There are more important things. We're going to just change your wishes. We will steward those wishes in perpetuity. So if a donor places their money with us, they can trust that it's always going to go to their highest and best interest.
Right.
Now, we like those unrestricted gifts that allow us to be flexible, but there are plenty of needs and opportunities and challenges in the community. So if you like the arts, you like working in the environment, you want to work with children or elderly, there are always going to be those needs. So we can always find ways through our grant making to get that money out into the community.
Great. And I imagine the milk portion means nutrition, right?
Right. So food assistance, food banks, food pantries. Back in the day, the Silverthau gave us that money. There was not milk in schools. This was pre-milk in schools.
Okay.
It was later that they figured out that's how they should get calcium into young people, by putting it in the schools. But this predates that.
Great. That's an interesting history. Thank you. Okay.
And we have been doing that for the last 96 years, taking folks' money in, holding on to the corpus of it, and putting into the community and responding to the needs of the Greater New Haven community.
You know, and as you say that, that's interesting. Banking underwent such a major shift. I imagine you've worked with different banks, right, since that time?
We have. It originally started, I believe, with 14 trustee banks, and they have, over the decades, merged and combined. And so we're down to just a few trustee banks that work with us now. We've also, and that's the old model of a foundation, the trustee model.
Okay.
We've also have a corporate side, so the donations come directly into us as opposed to going into a bank.
Okay.
So we manage the corporate side. Our trustee banks still manage those things that were placed in trust with them all those years ago. And a donor can do it either way they'd like to do that. We manage the money and put it out into the community, and that's what the nonprofit support and grant making side of what I do is.
Okay, so there's a whole fiscal end now to the foundation that probably wasn't there initially. It was probably all done more with the banks.
Correct,
right? So you've kind of adopted that responsibility.
Yes.
So grant making is not all you do, it's only part of what you do, correct?
That's right.
So share with us your other responsibilities and how it all comes together with, your rich background that we're going to cover we go on.
Okay, well, I always say I have three halves to my job.
Okay.
The first half is the grant making. So we make it opportunities for all kinds of organizations, large and small, those that are emerging, those that are well-oiled machines, to come to us and make a case for funding. With the money that we have available to put out, we help make those decisions as to where that money goes, and we have a team that does that. We are always very inclusionary in that we try to make sure that all partners feel welcome and available, that funds are accessible to them. We have programs from very small grants to multi-year general operating support and everything in between. We also do programs for leadership development to help organizations be stronger. So the grant making side is a very big part of what we do. The foundation puts about $30 million into our 20-town region. So we're Milford to Madison, the lower Naugatuck Valley, up to Cheshire and Wallingford.
Okay.
Into that region, we've put out $30 million. Two-thirds of that are non-discretionary grants. Organizations place their endowments with us. We manage it for them. They automatically get the payment. A donor may have named a particular organization, and we will never change that donor's wishes, as I said. So the grant automatically goes out to that organization in perpetuity. The 1/3 is discretionary, and that's where we can decide which organizations are going to be able to get a grant this year. And my mentor at the foundation always said no is not no forever. So if there's an opportunity that comes across our desk and we're not quite ready for investment, we always try to find a way to get that organization to a yes in the future.
Okay.
So that's the second half of my job is nonprofit support. We do lots of workshops and convenings and training programs to help organizations be stronger in their infrastructure. We help board members and staff members learn how to run a better organization, how to do their own fundraising, how to write grants, how to manage their finances, how to develop a good board who's a good team and oversees the operations of what's going on in an appropriate way. So we do a lot of that. We also do convening of executive directors and board chairs so that they can commiserate with one another. Those are lonely positions. They're in leadership, and it's hard to turn around to ask anyone a question. So we provide a forum for them to get together. And that's through our nonprofit support. And then the third half of what I do is Give Greater and the Great Give. Give Greater is a year-round platform. Right now, about 505 organizations that are all local, and they're listed with their volunteer leadership, their professional leadership, their programs, their accomplishments, their needs, 3 years of financials so a donor can make an informed decision, or a potential board member can research who they'd like to be involved with, and if they're so compelled, there's a donation page and they make a donation right there. But that database lives 365 for everyone to access if they're interested, and you can search by issue area. So if you said, I'm really interested in serving on a board, I like to work with youth, you can search youth organizations, who's in this community doing good work, and make an informed decision about who to follow up with. Once a year, we spin off The Great Give, which is our 36-hour giving frenzy in this community. Last year, in 36 hours, they raised $3.87 million for 553 organizations. Everyone comes to the table, plays together. We put up prizes and matches and incentives to bring donors to the table. Everyone works really hard for that 36 hours, raises lots of money, and when it's over until the next year.
How long have you been involved in the Great Give? How long has that even existed?
It's existed for 16 years.
Okay.
When I started, this is a good segue into the next piece, that when I started, I was the development director at a local nonprofit.
Okay.
And I was one of the early adopters participating in the Great Give as a fundraiser.
Super. Let's talk about all these different opportunities, responsibilities that you had prior, to coming to the Community Foundation, and those skills, I'm sure, built on one another. So some notes I have around like fundraising, grant writing, financial, and then the softer skills, listening, compassion, running events, organizations, capacity building. I'm in human resources as a consultant, so I certainly totally appreciate the organizational effectiveness part of it. And so tell us how those things did build on each other.
Well, I had no idea that I was in training for 35 years for the position that I'm in now, but I was.
All right.
So my first job out of college was with the New Haven Symphony, so arts.
Right.
And I was in operations, logistics. So I was the one that made sure the orchestra had all of their physical needs taken care of. I was their education director, doing educational programs, preschool through an adult lecture series.
Okay.
Edited the program book because I had a graphics background. My degree's in journalism with a minor in studio art, so I got to do a little bit of everything, but did a lot of work in the arts. Left the symphony to have my daughter. I planned on staying home, but I had been volunteering with the Dixwell Community Q House, and they suddenly needed to raise money very quickly. They needed someone who knew their mission, knew their programs, knew their constituents. They didn't have an office or a computer, and I was home with a new baby.
Okay, perfect
It was
match.
perfect, absolutely perfect. So I started working part-time for the Q House as the development director. I was a good writer with a journalism background, so I was doing a lot of grant writing for positive youth development, arts, positive youth development. We had programs for adjudicated youth. We had a food pantry. We had a 7-day-a-week teen center. I was with them for 7 years and ended up as a full-time program and development director. So picked up a lot of youth service background in my history with that. Left the Q to go to my alma mater, Sacred Heart Academy in Hamden, as development director. Did a lot of special events, working with the parents. Volunteer structure was really strong there. Secondary education.
Yeah.
Left there and I did what I call my municipal hiccup. I did 4 years as the deputy, then chief administrative officer for the town of Hamden. So in that role, capital planning, budgeting $110 million capital budget, doing all of the writing of the legislation, so economic development. My dad was a carpenter. I grew up on job sites. I understood plans. I became the construction manager for 6 months.
You knew how to read blueprints.
I could read blueprints.
That's a skill.
I could speak somewhat intelligently at a job meeting.
Yeah.
So I got the role. I knew at least what questions to ask. I didn't know what answers I was going to get, but I knew what questions to ask, and I was deeply involved. They were all They were all schools that I was building, 2 substantial renovations and 1 new construction. So I knew enough about the projects that I knew where we were going. So I had the background to be able to ask those questions. So I was a construction manager. I ran the public works department for 3 months when someone was out on leave. I ran youth services because I had that background. So I was picking up a lot of, like, dropping in and running a department, understanding how the dynamics of the personnel worked. So picking up all of those skills. I left there and went to the Community Loan Fund, which is now Capital for Change here in Wallingford. It's a CDFI, a Community Development Finance Institution. It's a nonprofit bank, and they worked on affordable housing and transitional housing. And they fund through getting loans from people. Instead of going to a bank and getting a CD, you'd lend your money to the loan fund. They would turn that around and lend it to developers building affordable housing. People would get housing to live in. The developer get their money to do the project, and the lender got a quarterly return. So win-win-win, wonderful organization, picking up all the skills there in economic development and housing development and all of that. So after a very successful run there of raising a lot of money very quickly, was courted by other organizations, and I said I would not leave there because at the time I had 2 very active kids, and they gave me the flexibility to be able to do what I needed to do as a mom.
Yeah.
And it was a great mission, and there were great people to work for. So I said I would never leave to make more money for me, but I would go to the other side of the table and give money away. And one day my executive director came in the office and said, "Did you see that job at the foundation? It's so you. I'll be a reference." So that's how I got to the foundation.
Okay. To the municipality, which you describe as a little hiccup in your nonprofit career, right? I've worked with over 20 municipalities doing human resources work. My husband worked for a municipality, but I've never worked in one directly. How would you compare environment of municipalities versus, say, the nonprofit world?
I've been giving that a lot of thought lately because as we look at governmental efficiency, any municipality, any state, any federal government is basically a nonprofit. We are not there to make money or walk away with a profit. We are there to serve the people that we serve. From that regard, it had very much the same sort of aspect for me, coming in service to the people I was serving. In that case, who elected my mayor, who chose me to serve him. So it was very much a service-oriented job for me. And just equally important, gave me an opportunity to really listen to the people in town, to understand there's no one answer that's going to satisfy everyone.
Right.
So ultimately, you have to do what's right for the most people and for the future.
Right.
And it was making those decisions that were the toughest ones, because you knew someone was going to get hurt in every decision that you made. But it was a chance to be able to weigh all of that and take in as much information and find solutions that would be the least painful, and find alternatives for those who were harmed.
Okay. So you're a lifelong Camden resident, correct?
Every day of my life.
Okay. And I would think that would be interesting. You described it as being the face kind of the mayor's office, right? Right. That interaction, and as you talk about, a sense of service. I would think you had a lot of established relationships, and probably due to this day, that would be an extra layer, wouldn't it, of things to kind of navigate?
It is, and it continues to be, even as in my service, because I have so many associations with so many of the nonprofits that come to me in a variety of ways. I've volunteered, I've worked with, has personal relationships with leadership. At the end of the day, it's all about the integrity of the process.
Right.
Sometimes you have to say no to really good friends. Sometimes you have to compromise things, but it's, as I said, it's finding a way to find alternatives.
Okay.
And finding a voice to be able to empathize enough with people so that they understand, I hear what you're saying. This is what we have to do, and this is why, and this is how I'm going to try to help you anyhow.
So would you say it's a combination of critical and creative skills?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. And emotional intelligence and, yeah. Okay, that's a magic mix.
It does not come without tears, though.
Right. I'm sure there's dilemmas that you can think of today.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, you're glad you don't have to do that again. Now let's get on to one of your passions, which is the Whitney Players.
Indeed.
Okay. And that's like a 20-year adventure that you've been having?
We're in the 21st right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are you primarily the stage manager?
I am.
Okay.
I've done a little bit of performing with them, but mostly I am backstage doing, I am the calling stage manager, so I call all the cues. I paint the sign, and I lay out the program, pulling that skill up from the symphony days.
I was going to say, that loops back.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Sure, it's all the same.
And, yeah.
Whitney Players started 21 years ago when the founding choreographer and a music director were hired at the grammar school my kids were going to do a play. I didn't hire them, although I had known the director since I was in grammar school. They came in and did a show at our elementary school. Made them promise that they would take every kid who would behave and who would show up. We had 180 kids in the show.
Oh, my.
It was a version of the Wizard of Oz called Magical Land of Oz. It's it's the story, it's different music.
Yeah.
And because with that volume of kids, they couldn't really do too much casting. It was like every kindergarten kid is going to be a Poppy.
Yeah.
For 3 minutes, they sing la 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 and put Dorothy to sleep. But the director was so skillful that she made each Poppy think the whole show would fall apart without them.
Yeah.
If they didn't sing that song and Dorothy didn't go to sleep, what would we do?
What happened?
You're the star.
Yeah.
Same thing with the second grade kids who were the Munchkins, the third grade soldiers, the fifth grade flying monkeys. Every kid thought they were the star of the show. And it was such a beautiful atmosphere that was set up. And the sixth graders were given the leads. So they set up a nice year for the school because the sixth graders were then mentoring the little kids. And the school never made that turn halfway through the year where the sixth graders thought they were too cool for the rest of the school.
Right.
Because they were so busy working with the little kids. So it was a delightful year for the teachers, and they all told us that at the time. And when we went through that experience, the director and choreographer had such a good time with it, they founded the Whitney Players.
Great. So tell us about the Whitney Players today.
Whitney Players today does workshops primarily for youth. We also have some folks on the spectrum and some others, adults who are in our workshop program. It's inclusive, it's diverse. The workshops happen in the spring, and then they culminate with a showcase, so the kids really get to showcase their talents. Some of them are extraordinarily talented. Some of them, it's their first time on stage, and for them to be able to get up in front of an audience and do a solo or even in a group number is huge. So those are the workshops. We then do a 2-week summer program for 18 and under for kids. Our past participants are the counselors. There are also adult counselors that pull the whole thing together. A lot of teachers taking the summer off are our counselors who work in theater in their schools. We do our main stage show in the summer is an all ages, so age appropriate casting. Kids will get kids roles, and there's always a children's chorus, but adults get the adult roles. And there is a very high production value. We've used projections for the same company that does projections in New York. Fully costumed, everyone has a microphone that matches the skin tone of the person wearing it, so that they don't have to have, a dark-skinned young man doesn't have to have a white thing going across his face. It matches the skin tone. So it's always been very important to us to make sure that we're aware of that. Another set of showcases in the fall, and then at holiday time we do a pasta dinner with the cream of the crop as the performers. Okay. And it's like going to a 200-person family dinner. And the talent is just extraordinary. Make Broadway stars? Yeah, actually, we just had someone open last night in Great Gatsby. Wonderful. She was also in On Your Feet. She was Bad Cinderella. She was chosen by Andrew Lloyd Webber as the first Bad Cinderella. Andrew Lloyd Webber's first Latina princess. My son is on Broadway right now, working Sunset Boulevard. He grew up through the company as well. But we also have kids who are classroom teachers. Kids who are a little more confident to get up in front of a classroom and do a presentation or tell a story. We have a guy on the spectrum who comes to us from Kensington, Connecticut. And when he first came, he sat in the corner with his mom. And then within a year, he moved over to the circle of kids. Then he started sitting in the circle. And then he started talking in the circle. Now he plays Santa in our Christmas cabaret and does a solo song. Wonderful. And the folks from Ben Haven come to watch him because they can't believe the transformation. And it's the theater that brought it out in him. So it's the transferable skills. It's great to make Broadway stars, but that's not what we're there for. We're there to build a team. We have transgender kids. We have non-binary kids who come to us looking for a home and feel comfortable and accepted and are honored in their identity.
Having corporate life experience, certainly the ability to feel confident in giving a presentation, speaking on your feet, not hating the sound of your voice, all those things that become part of your toolkit for success, I would think too, is just wonderful for if people can overcome stage fright. I mean, what do they say? People's fear of giving a presentation is greater than going to the dentist. I mean, right? So,
and this can help them overcome that.
Yeah, that's a very practical far-reaching.
And the same way that in the Magical Land of Oz, the little poppies were made the stars, our director is committed to making sure that the third person from the left has developed their own character, brings them to their part, whatever they want to make it strong, because a strong ensemble is important for a show. Just having good leads doesn't make a show spectacular or successful. It's an entire package. So she spends as much time with the ensemble. More often, the ensemble gets more time on stage than the actual leads. Because she throws them into every number she possibly can.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. And I'm sure the parents and caregivers, et cetera, are just so engaged and thrilled with it all, right?
And the adults. I mean, we have a 94-year-old man. This is his opportunity to perform. Now, we're never quite sure what Bert's going to say when he goes out on stage. Because at this point, he's not too good with his lines. But he will always have a home. And as long as he wants to be in a show, he will have a place to be in a show. And we have a radiologist at Yale who is an extraordinary singer. And he has 4 kids who are equally as talented. So is his wife, who just had another baby, so she's taking a bit of a break, but he is just amazing. And they moved to this community to come for Yale. He's working at Yale. And didn't feel too much a part of the community until he found this family.
Wonderful.
And now they're home.
Listen, as we age, we certainly, as you've traced your career and so forth, we think about our key decisions and influences. So my question, as with all my guests, what advice would you give your 25-year-old self?
my 25-year-old self, I would probably tell me to build in self-care. Because when you get to be 65, you don't do that. So at 25, if you've set that routine of having something to fall back on, I think it becomes part of your life. It's too late to introduce it later when life happens.
Okay.
And there's so much going on.
Anything that might shift with that if you think about yourself in your 40s, like true beginning of midlife for most people?
Well, thinking I already had that self-care going on, what I realized, and I guess it was probably when I hit 50, I realized that I'm a stage manager. I have to solve everything in 30 seconds or the audience knows something's wrong.
Right.
So I don't do process very well. And I recognized in my 40s that there are other people that have to have that process. So I would say to me at 40, slow down.
Yeah.
Appreciate the process, appreciate the other people need process time.
Yeah.
Listen carefully.
Okay, that's a great example, giving recognition to how different people approach different things, different types of people. I use the Myers-Briggs type indicator in some of my work, and just that appreciation of not everybody starts at the same point. Hopefully you get to the same end, right? But different paths.
Right. And you don't all take the same path to
No,
get
you
there.
don't take the same. Some start with the trees, go back down. Some start with the forest. It's, yeah. Okay. And do you have a favorite quote or mantra?
I guess I thought a lot about this, but would it be short enough to remember and to bring out? And the one that came to mind first was a Henry Ford quote: "Don't find fault, find a remedy. Anybody can complain."
Wonderful. That's a great can-do attitude. Okay. Well, thank you so much. This has been delightful. People know a whole lot more about the foundation and foundations in general and the Whitney Players and yourself. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Been a pleasure.
Please tune in to hear other fascinating women on future episodes of MidLIFE Matters. I'm Georgian Lussier, your host. Thank you for joining us.